Chapter 6, Dry Bones Battle. The time was around midnight. The train was chugging smoothly down the tracks, and all the passengers were fast asleep. The Koopalings were out cold. It didn't seem like anything could stir them from their deep slumber. Suddenly a big bang resounded on top of the train. It made the whole steam engine rattle and shake, and it managed to waken Iggy and Ludwig from their midnight z's. "Ludwig," asked Iggy with concern, "did you hear that?" "Yeah, why do you think I'm awake, genius?" said Ludwig groggily as he rubbed his eyes. There was another loud bang. It sounded like a gunshot that had been muffled because the gun had been put in a semi-soundproof room. Iggy and Ludwig exited their room and looked up at the ceiling, where a series of thuds resounded. It sounded like something was walking on top of the train, something extremely big. "Go wake up the others," said Ludwig firmly. "I'm going to go check outside." Iggy jogged down the hallways and knocked on the doors of Celia and his siblings, his heart beating at 1,000 miles an hour. With his fear escalating with each passing minute, it didn't even occur to him that the train had made a premature stop. "What's going on?" asked Roy once everyone had gathered in the hallway. "Yeah, why did the train stop?" asked Lemmy. "Did we reach the station already? I thought we weren't supposed to get there until morning." The thuds on top of the train returned. Everyone shuddered. "That didn't sound good," said Celia worriedly. The door on the side of the train opened up, allowing Ludwig to come back inside. "Guys," he said, "I think you might want to see this." The group rushed to the doorway, and when they glanced outside, an audible gasp erupted from the lot of them. The train had stopped in a desert, Tiki Valley to be exact, and all across the desert floor were hundreds of thousands of dry bones. The Koopalings were used to seeing dry bones, even in large quantities such as this, but they were not used to seeing dry bones that looked murderously angry at them. "Oh, man," said Larry, "we are so dead." "Yeah," said Roy, "it was nice knowing you." One of the dry bones threw a bone at Lemmy, knocking him to the ground. This caused all the dry bones to rush at the train. "Jump!" screamed Iggy. Celia and the Koopalings jumped out of the train and started attacking the dry bones. Most bounced on top of them, but Wendy, Morton, and Ludwig had their own methods of attack. Wendy hurled her bracelets at the dry bones like boomerangs. Morton went to his shell and slammed into them, and Ludwig flew up into the air and hurled blue fireballs at them via pyrokinesis. No matter what method of attack they used, however, their efforts proved to be futile as the dry bones regenerated. "It's no use," said Iggy in dismay after he had squashed another skeleton. "We're not making any progress." "Ludwig, how are you doing?" cried Wendy so that her brother could hear her. Ludwig hurled another fireball at another dry bones. The dry bones didn't even get singed. When the fireball hit it, the fire simply bounced off the surface of its smooth, crackly bones. "They're immune to my fire!" screamed Ludwig in amazement. "So what do we do now?" asked Larry. The dry bones were now closing in on the aid of them. Celia put her hand to her chin, considering the situation. "Wait a minute!" she exclaimed. "I've got an idea!" With that, she rushed back onto the train. Rory, filled with curiosity, followed her. "Celia," he yelled, "what are you doing?" Celia didn't turn around or stop running as she explained her plan to Roy. "The dry bones are immune to fire," she said, "but they might not necessarily be immune to ice." "Ice?" said Roy. "What do you mean?" Celia stopped running and picked up something next to a window. Roy saw that it was the ice blower that Celia pulled out of the pot from earlier. You want to use that?" asked Roy. "But Celia, it's impossible for Koopas to use power-ups from the Mushroom Kingdom." Celia smiled. "It might be impossible for Koopas," she said, "but that doesn't mean it's impossible for me." With that, she gobbled the ice flower, roots and all. Roy stood back in amazement to see what would happen, if anything. Then Celia's entire body transformed into a living ice sculpture. Roy was amazed and a little horrified. "Whoa!" Roy said. "Celia, how do you feel?" "Like my insides have been turned into a freezer!" she cried, and ran toward the exit of the train with Roy trailing behind her. It wasn't until Roy started slipping due to a lack of traction that he realized that Celia wasn't running at all. The ice flower had granted her the ability to create ice at her leisure, and she was using that ability to create an ice trail for herself to skate on. Roy couldn't help but sigh at the sight of this. "Man, that girl is cool," he thought dreamily to himself. Celia burst out of the train doorway with like an energetic firecracker, animated and ready to make ice. The Koopalings cheered as she skated along and threw snowballs at her foes, encasing them in pure ice. In no time at all, the entire throng of dry bones was encased in a sheet of rock-hard ice. When Celia had finished, the power of his effects wore off, and the Koopalings applauded. "That was awesome, Celia!" exclaimed Larry. "It was nothing," she said. "Nothing?" said Iggy. "You pretty much obliterated a whole army of dry bones all by yourself without lifting a finger. We really need to get you as a boss of a stage next time we go princess snapping. I think you could be a useful asset to the team." Celia blushed, making her whole face go an interesting shade of orange. Lemmy started to giggle like a little kid, causing everyone to turn his way. "What is it, Lems?" asked Wendy with a raised eyebrow. "I just thought of another pun," he said between chortles. "I don't think I should say it, though." Wendy and Ludwig exchanged looks. Ludwig sighed irritably. "Go ahead," he said. Lemmy grinned. "Thanks, Ludwig," he said. "All right, what do you call it when you're hurling snowballs at your enemies?" "Throwing faux balls!" His laughter grew harder as he slapped his knees. Ludwig shook his head and rolled his eyes. "Oh, the world I live in," he said. Suddenly the group heard a loud bang come from on top of the train. They turned around nervously, and the sight they saw made them freeze. There, on top of the train, was none other than the infamous undead gorilla of Tiki Valley. The monster roared and jumped down to the ground. He grabbed Roy, the closest person to him, and ran off into the night.